Hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar, Open Data Automated Using FME with Socrata. With us today are Safe Software's Sales Director, Craig Vernon, and Product Support Specialist, Laura Kersons. From the Socrata team, we also have Integration Developer, Adrian Lorenzi, and Director of Developer Experience, Chris Metcalf. They will be sharing their insights into how you can combine the power of Socrata and FME. Laura, would you like to go ahead and kick us off?
Okay, actually it's Craig. I'll kick off and then pass it over to Laura. So just want to say thanks for everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today. Safe Software is extremely excited about their partnership with Socrata. We've been this has been coming to fruition over the last couple of years, and we're really excited about the future. And thanks for Socrata for giving us the opportunity to talk a little bit about Safe Software and a very high-level intro of FME. Today. So for those who are not familiar with Safe Software, I'm just going to step back there. We are a private company. We're located in Surrey, British Columbia, which is about 45 minutes south of Vancouver proper. We're about 100 employees with partners all over the world and thousands of organizations who are relying on FME every day. And there's a wide breadth of industries where FME has found itself in the last 21 years, certainly in the oil and gas industry and the utilities industry. All levels of government, really globally, whether it's local or state level, federal, national, or on the military side, FME is heavily involved in the government sector, telecommunication, transportation. Pretty much anybody who's creating or dealing with infrastructure maps is looking at FME. So yeah, so we've got our product FME, and there's really two versions of that, the FME desktop and the FME server. Today you'll primarily see FME desktop. That's where, in the world of FME, everything begins. That's where you create your business rules, or your workspaces as we call them, the business flow, to get the most out of your data. And then we have a scalable, more enterprise solution, FME server. So you would publish those workspaces up to FME server and allow others to be able to use those through different web services in a variety of ways. Certainly if you're looking at more automation or notifications, that sort of thing, then you would be looking at FME server. And then so there's really different deployments of server. You can install server on premise, in your own cloud or virtual environment, and then we have FME Cloud, which is a FME server that we host in the cloud, and it's a pay-per-use licensing type model. But really for today we'll be focusing on FME desktop. So over the last 20 years or so, I mean, data interoperability, so the sharing of data or the moving of data between different systems, environments, and formats, this is really a hard task, and this is where FME comes into play and where Safe Software spends all of their time. We don't have a services arm. We rely on strong partners such as Socrata to do the services. We want to focus on building the best tool that we can for this whole data interoperability. And try to take the angst and the pain out of things like ingress of data. So let's just, sorry Laura, there we go. So early on, it was really a support for CAD and GIS and GIS databases. In that mix is, oh there we go, in that mix is the tabular, non-spatial, and we have a strong, very strong Excel reader writer. We can also support ASCII, CSV. And over time, we've added other data structures, so including raster, point cloud. We've got a lot of tools in FME that allow you to manipulate raster and point cloud. We've always supported XML, GML, and some of the web services around those. And of course, there's a lot of overlap between these different data structures. So in the BIM, or the Building Information Modeling and 3D realm, there's a standard called CityGML, which is very popular, and it's a 3D standard for representing 3D building information. And then in more recent years, and this is where our relationship with Socrata came into fruition, is the support for the cloud formats and things like big data. So as an example might be like DynamoDB or Redshift, they come to mind. And then the whole Internet of Things, so really sensor, you can think of that as maybe it's a GPS sensor on a truck fleet or a train, or maybe a static sensor that's measuring or monitoring river level. This is typically not large data volumes, but it's a steady stream, and FME is very well suited to monitoring those steady streams. Now, although it's relatively easy and straightforward to plug into a new format or one of the existing formats already supported in FME, to really light up the data at the destination end, we need to be able to transform the data appropriately. And so data transformation really is the cornerstone of data interoperability, and we have many tools, and you'll see some of those today, and Laura will touch on a few as well. We have many tools within FME for transforming your data to get the best out of the data in its final resting place. So in restructuring the data, FME enables this in a wide variety of ways. Feature types, so this is our kind of generic term for the table structure of the format that you're working with. And each format has different names for the table structure. If it's a database type like Oracle or SQL, then it would be table. Geodatabase users refer to those as feature classes. AutoCAD, MicroStation would be layer or level, and then we have attribute names and attribute values that we work with, so we can rename attributes, add new attributes, remove attributes, fiddle around with the values in many ways, and manipulate different types of geometry as well. And then underlying everything in FME is the ability to do a coordinate system transformation, and we have a wide range of predefined coordinate systems, over 2,000 in fact, and if you were working with a coordinate system that we don't already support, it's relatively easy and straightforward for us to add a new one. So that's kind of drinking water through a fire hose of FME and safe software, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm going to pass it over to Laura, and she's going to go through a pretty high-level demo.
All right, thanks, Greg. So I'll just close off the PowerPoint here. And right here, so I've just got to open up just a workspace that I've built up. So what I'm showing here is Workbench. So this is FME Workbench, which is the product that provides a graphical user interface for you to be able to build up your workflows or your data conversions. So this one here, I'm reading in data from a SQLite database. And on the other side here, I'm actually going to be writing it out to Socrata. So it's just an example of what a typical workflow might look like. So on the left-hand side here, I have what we call a reader feature type. So it's a representation of the data set that you're bringing in. So this really could be any format. So I've just picked SQLite here for purposes of an illustration. This represents a single table inside that database, along with all the attributes that were defined on that. So I'm pulling all that into my workflow so that I can make any changes I would like and adjustments to this data set before pulling it across into my final output location. So you notice here that there's a different kind of number of attributes. So I've gone in and I've actually adjusted the attributes that I'd like to see in my final output. So that's one kind of aspect of FME. So if I go inside here, this is a writer feature type, which represents the data that I'd like to be creating on the other end. So this is how I would like my information or my data to look in Socrata when I write it out there. So if I open this up, I can show you here I've got all my attributes defined, so I can add new ones and remove existing ones if I don't like having some of them in there. So I have full control over exactly what information is going to be written out on the other end. So in the middle here, we've got these blue boxes. These are what we call transformers, and these represent the various transformation tools that we have inside FME. So there's about 400 or so different ones that you can make use of. So there's lots of different things that you can do. So I've just pulled up a few for an illustration here. So one that I've got here is called the tester transformer. So this allows me to do some basic filtering on my data sets. So what I've got in here, for example, is I'm doing a little bit of data validation as I read in my data set. So I want to make sure I've got this attribute here called land coordinate. I want to make sure that this attribute isn't null or missing, so I want to make sure that there's no problems in my data set. So I've just got a couple of tests here. So if the attribute is not missing and if it's not null, I'm going to have it pass my test so I can allow it to go out to my output. If it fails that test, I'm going to log it out so I can take a closer look at this data. So if there are problems, I can come back in and inspect it later. I've got another transformer here. It's called the null attribute mapper. So what I've got in my data set here is I've got a few attributes representing kind of additional information. So this is property information that I'm reading in. And these are just kind of some legal notes about that specific property. It's come through in 5 lines, and I'd like to join them all up into a single attribute just to clean it up in my final output. So I'm using a string concatenator to bring all of those in together into a single attribute. And I'm using my null attribute mapper here, so in case one of my legal lines is null, I don't want to be writing out null strings to my output. So I'm mapping it to a blank value so it comes through properly. And then a final transformer here, I've got a sorter, so I just wanted to sort these by street name, so I have control over exactly how these features are written out, so I can decide exactly kind of what order I'd like people to be able to see them. So I've got the sorted alphabetic and ascending by that street name there. Again, I could have picked any attribute from my data set. So I'll just walk through just a basic example of adding a little bit of additional information to this. So what I've got here in my SQLite database is just attribute information. But I'd like to actually include a location, so a single point to show exactly where these properties are. And I can pull that in from a second data set. So what I can do inside my workspace here is actually add in a second reader to pull in information from a different format. So in this case, it's an AutoCAD DWG file. I'm going to go find that here. So it's my property polygons. I can adjust exactly how I read this in. So every format that we have in FME has a whole set of properties here, so we can decide exactly how they're going to be read in. I'll just show you a quick example here. This is our reader gallery inside FME. So this just gives you an idea of the wide variety of formats that we do support inside here. So there's quite a lot. So again, lots of flexibility. So you can bring nearly every kind of data format into here and work with it and pull it all together into a single output. And again, we have a very similar list for our writers as well, so you can pull that out into any kind of format that you'd like. So with that, I'm going to add in this extra reader. And here we go. So I've got a second feature type here representing the parcels. So this shows location information for each of my properties. And what I want to do is join this to the existing property information. So I can use one of our transformers to do that. So I could pull it up from our transformer gallery here in this categorized view, and I could pick it from inside here. Other option, since I know the name of the transformer, is I can actually just add it directly. So I'll just add in my feature merger and add this into my workflow. Connect it up into the existing flow here. So I want to merge these in together. I'm just adding the geometries onto each of these features. I can choose how I want this join to work. So I'll join on a common attribute, so it's my land coordinate, which matches up with a P coordinate from my AutoCAD. I just like to merge in the geometries. And with that, I can write that out. So I've now actually got geometries on each of these properties features. And one last step I would want to do here for my reader is I'd like to set the coordinate system. This is coming in the UTM coordinate system. It's UTM 83-10, so I can set that here. This tells the reader, it marks it as the correct coordinate system, so that when I write it out to Socrata here, which expects a lat long coordinate system, FME can do the reprojection for me on the way out. So that's just kind of a brief rundown of how FME works and kind of what a typical authoring experience might feel.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So I think with that, barring any questions, we'd like to pass the controls back to the good folks at Socrata.
In that case, let's move on to Adrian, who will talk a little bit about how we can use the power of FME to help Socrata customers get their data into our data platform.
Okay, great. So yeah, first I just wanted to echo Craig's sentiment that you're really excited about this partnership. There's lots of Socrata customers already making use of FME to pull data out of their various data systems and transform it and move it into the Socrata platform to assist with automation. So it's been really successful so far, and I'm really excited to see what other folks do with FME. So I'm just going to be going through basically a little bit deeper into what Socrata is going to do to support FME, using FME with the Socrata platform. So talk a little bit more about the Socrata Writer. Yeah, then I'm going to show some customer use cases. So some examples of current Socrata customers using FME to transform and publish data to Socrata. And then discuss some more about connector templates, which is sort of these basically templates that we can provide to move data, transform it from common systems that we see throughout our customer base to kind of make the ETL process a little more plug and play. And finally, talk about what advantages FME has over kind of scripting ETL. So scripting this data publishing and transformation. I think it has some interesting advantages over that approach. So I just wanted to bring that up. So first off, the Socrata spin on FME. So what does FME do? So you have data on your source system, as Laura just showed. Of course, you apply some magic, and then boom, your data is ready for the Socrata platform, and you can power some apps. Now I'm just kidding, but it's practically magic in some cases. So really, why I think using FME in the context of publishing data to Socrata is so powerful is really because FME provides this all-in-one, this one tool that you can use to do the entire ETL process. So for those of you that may not be familiar with ETL, ETL stands for extraction, transformation, and loading. So really, that's the process of extracting data, pulling data out of your system of record or your source system or file format, transforming that data, manipulating that data in some way such that it can be loaded into the Socrata platform. If you're going to power a particular app with that data, then you'd want to. This ETL process is very important to have the schema of that data match what is needed for a Socrata app, for example. So that's what FME looks like in the context of the Socrata. And then the last component is once you've authored this ETL process with FME, then you can go and schedule that process to happen automatically. And there are ways that, as Craig was mentioning, many safe customers use FME server for that. But you can also run the desktop. If you have your own scheduling tool, you can run the desktop workflow as well through your own scheduling tool. So I just wanted to relate some of the concepts in FME to their analogous concepts in Socrata. So as you've already seen, the sort of fundamentals are, the fundamental units or building blocks are these readers where you read data out of all those different database systems or file formats. Then you have your transformers, so that might be a date conversion transformer. And then, of course, the writer. So you can also write to lots and lots of different formats, but in the context of Socrata, you would be using the Socrata Writer to publish the resulting data to update or create a new Socrata data set. Features is an important concept where once you read in data, you're getting a set of features, and those features are, in the context of Socrata, analogous to a row in Socrata. So one feature is going to have one or more attributes, and an example of a feature might be a record representing a single crime, and then the attributes are analogous to columns in a Socrata data set or fields, and a particular attribute might be the date that a crime occurred. And then you also have this FME geometry, which is an optional attribute. So in the example of crimes, you might have a coordinate or point where that crime occurred, and that will be written out to Socrata as in the location column as a point. So a little bit about the Socrata Writer. We've partnered with SAFE and developed this really great Socrata Writer, and it is available within FME 2014 SP4, and then it also will come standard with FME 2015. There's an older writer that does exist before that, but we strongly recommend getting the latest version of FME so that you can take advantage of the most up-to-date writer. This writer, it will support replace operations, upsert operations, which is basically based on a Socrata row identifier. You can, it'll update any existing rows and then append new rows. And then you can also do deletes. And I guess, yeah, I can show how to configure that in I guess a quick demo actually. Also, there is proxy support within FME as well, and so that you can publish data from behind a proxy as well. Okay. So Laura did an awesome demo, which I will not do quite as cool of a demo as that, but I just wanted to just show actually publishing, maybe going through and actually publishing the data to a Socrata data set and showing the resulting data set. So I'm just going to do a super simple example. I have FME 2015 up here. And what I'm going to do is just show a simple example of reading an Excel file, an Excel spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet here. And I just want to show a quick example transformation where I'm going to map this risk column. This is a common task I've seen our customers use, where I'll just map, if risk is 1, I want to create a new column and map that to a low risk category. And if it's 2, medium risk, and so on. And so I'll just be creating a new column. So just a pretty simple example. So I can say add reader, click add reader. I already have this configured, but somebody was interested in all the formats. I think Laura showed this as well, but there's lots and lots of different formats you can read from. Some of the more common formats that we see our customers using is things like Oracle databases, SQL Server databases, Microsoft Access, various Esri formats. All of these are supported by FME. So in this case, I want to use Excel, and I'm just going to select that Excel file on the desktop. And you can do parameters is kind of nice because you can see sort of a preview and make sure it's being read in as you expect. And I'll hit OK. So that's going to create the reader. I can see what fields or attributes are being read in. And over here in the transformer gallery, this is all those building blocks you have to actually do data transformations. So one thing I really like is you can just search right in there in the transformer gallery and look for what you need. So a lot of times I don't even really have to look at documentation. I'll just kind of start typing something that I want, like map. I want to do some mapping, and I want the attribute value mapper. So I'll click on that and add it to the workflow, the workspace, and then I'll double click on there. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to show. So if I close out the log here, when I click on one of these transformers, I can get some nice inline or documentation right inside of the FME Workbench, and that's kind of nice to know how to use the particular transformer.
Adrian?
Yeah.
We do have one question I think it would be good in the context of this. I see you have address information in the data set here. They're curious how to create a location column from address attributes, which I think you're going to do shortly, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't actually going to do that, but I can do that. Yeah, I can show how to, basically, I think what you're asking about is doing, using Socrata to do geocoding for that address.
I think
is that right?
You're asking for, yeah. If they need more clarification, they can send another question.
Okay, great. Yeah, so let me, so, you know what, yeah, let me just show that instead. So let's not do attribute mapping, and let's do instead format. So right here we can see in my Excel file, I have this address. These are broken out into separate columns. I have the address, city, state, and zip code. So I can use Socrata to automatically geocode that address because it's US address, and then generate the lat long coordinates so that now you can make maps and such. So I can actually do that geocoding within Socrata, and the way I want to do that is I just need to concatenate those fields into one field, and then it will geocode that for me. So the way I would do that is use a string concatenator. So again, if I say concat, then string concatenator is down here. So I can connect that here, and open this up. Now, if I want that new attribute, I can now type in the, I can now format those fields to be a full kind of comma-separated address. So if I go to advanced mode, that'll make it a little easier. So now if I have the address, I can go address, and then city, and the state somewhere down here. Now we have the state, and I can also include the zip code, and I could put another comma in there. So that should be all I need, and now that's going to create a new attribute called result, and it can publish that to Socrata so that it can be geocoded. And so as you can see now, if you check out the output there, you'll have this new column called result. So then finally, I can add a writer. So I can select the format as Socrata, and then when I hit parameters, this is where you'd enter your Socrata domain. So here, if I just wanted to publish to this domain, oops, I can just paste it in here and then put your username and password. And then now if I want to include that result attribute, a quick way to do that is, let's see, I can just press OK now, and it's missing that result attribute. So if I want to include that, I can say copy attributes from transformer, and then it'll just include that result. So then if I connect it up here, that's all I need. So now I can actually run this this job and create the Socrata data set.
So one more question about the geocoding there, Adrian. Somebody asked what the limits were on the Socrata geocoder in the current example. Should be the same as our current geocoder, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the neat things you can do with FME, just to bring it up, is that if you have your own geocoder provided by your GIS department or something like that, you can use that from within FME to geocode locally, which might be faster or more accurate than our geocoder, if you have your own address file, for example.
Yep. And yeah, just going a little bit further into the details of the writer, if I double click on the Socrata writer, I can set the target dataset name. And this is actually going to, if this dataset name doesn't already exist, it will create a new dataset, and it will establish the correct data types. So that's pretty nifty. And you can also update an existing dataset based on its name, or if you want to be a little bit more cautious about that, you might want to use the dataset identifier, because in case you change the name later, then it'll continue to work. So you can always get the dataset identifier by navigating to the dataset on Socrata, and then you can go ahead and copy in your browser at the end of the URL. There's that kind of 8-character code there, and you can just paste that into where it says dataset name, and that will update this existing dataset. If you go over to format parameters, this is useful because you can control the update method. So the way that you do a replace operation is going to be by setting truncate dataset first to be yes, and then the writer mode should be upsert. And a little note about that, we've built some really nice technology into the writer with Safe's help, that basically when you're doing a replace operation, it's actually only going to automatically identify which records have changed and only publish those changed records. So even if you're doing a replace with millions of records, it's actually going to oftentimes only a small subset of those records are actually changing, say from day to day, from update to update. Then it's going to go really fast, and so that can remove the complexity of having to deal with doing incremental updates. But of course, you can also do just an upsert where you'd want to set a row identifier on Socrata, and you can do that as well. You can also do delete operations as well. And then this geometry column name here, that's going to be if your records have your features have a geometry associated, it's going to course those to a point, or if they're already a point, it's going to make sure that they're in the correct projection, and then create a location column with the the points that are associated as FME geometry. And you can set the name of that column in here. So if I wanted to call it location, I could do that.
So Adrian, this is a fairly complex question that I think I'm going to try and answer, and if you have someone you want to add to it, you can. Someone says, we have an example use case where a compressed file that contains an Esri shapefile from a third-party source, federal, and they want to build a Socrata dataset from the contents of the shapefile or join it to a local dataset. Can you talk in an example that is similar how that process might work? So that's something that you can do with an FME. So it sounds like when you say compressed file, you mean an Esri shapefile zip file. So you could use the shapefile reader to pull that into FME. And then once it's in FME, you could either load that into a Socrata dataset, subject to the limitations of what you can load into Socrata via the writer right now. So right now, the Socrata writer doesn't support polygons, but in a later version, when Socrata supports that via our data sync tooling and in the platform more natively, you'll be able to do that. But you could write it to something like Mandara. And FME also allows you to join between two data sets. So you could, for example, take a shapefile that had counties, let's say, and join that against a raw data set from a CSV of county level data and add the polygons to that data. So you could do that with an FME and then write that out either to a shapefile you could put into Mandara or later into something you could write into Socrata. Does that sound about right, Adrian?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, yeah, I'll mention this more at the end, but yeah, we both companies, Socrata and Safe, both have wonderful support resources. We've got lots of documentation, and we also have a team of support specialists that can help you. So you can reach out to either support team. If it's more specific to Socrata, we can handle it, but if it's maybe about a particular data format that you're curious about how to read from a particular data format, it might make more sense to reach out to Safe. But we're working together to support our mutual customers, so definitely take advantage of that. And I'll send out some links at the end. And of course, yeah, I'll mention this more at the end, but yeah, both companies, Socrata and Safe, both have wonderful support resources. We've got lots of documentation, and we also have a team of support specialists that can help you. So you can reach out to either support team. If it's more specific to Socrata, we can handle it, but if it's maybe about a particular data format that you're curious about how to read from a particular data format, it might make more sense to reach out to Safe. But we're working together to support our mutual customers, so definitely take advantage of that. And I'll send out some links at the end.
So another question, Adrian, that's one I think the key take. Are there any plans to support loading lines and polygons into Socrata Mandara with FME?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So we do have so the writer that we've been demonstrating, the Socrata writer here, won't support writing to Mandara. However, there is an FME template. I'll discuss more about the templates in a few minutes. But we do have a template that we can provide with some instructions about how you can actually read in any kind of geospatial data, whether that be a shapefile or any other geospatial data that is going to have that geometry component, and write it out to update a Mandara data set. So I can there'll be links that's sent out to everybody attending of where to get that template. Okay, so moving on to show some cool customer use cases that I've come across so far from our customers using FME already. So here's a very simple kind of use case where there's the customer has data in SQL Azure database, and they're basically just extracting the data out of that database, and then in this example here, they're actually formatting the lat long that's actually in columns in the database, and such that it can be published to a Socrata location column, and then just publishing that data. So pretty simple workflow, but really simple, just as simple to set up as it looks. So some more parking data. yeah, you might wonder why those fields make no sense, but those are actually Dutch. So this is another case, relatively simple use of the feature merger. So there's two different database tables in SQL Azure, merging them together, just like Laura showed in her example, and then renaming the attribute. So I think they're actually renaming to English, which is kind of interesting, and then publishing those the result to a Socrata dataset, update a Socrata dataset. A much more complex example. The first thing I wanted to point out here that I think highlights one of the advantages of using FME is that even though it's quite complex, there's a lot going on, it's relatively straightforward to make sense of. It's very visual, and there's annotations. So the customer just annotated this with the tools within FME, and it kind of makes it a lot easier for someone else who isn't familiar with this particular ETL process to make sense of what's going on. So that makes things a lot more reusable, less prone to errors, and just it makes ETL a bit more understandable by people that maybe aren't even technical themselves. So over here, I'll just kind of explain a little bit about what's going on. You have this Oracle database. Data is being read out of an Oracle database. And then there's a geospatial database. I think it might be Oracle. I'm not sure. I think it might be another type of database. And pulling out points, doing some reprojection on those, and then merging them with data pulled out of an Oracle database table. Then saying, okay, I don't want I only want records after January 1st, 2009. Doing some date formatting, renaming of attributes, and value mapping. Then breaking out the fields into a year, month, and month fields. And then sort of some final stuff where just kind of looking at cases where, filtering out cases where I think an address is incorrectly formatted, writing that out to a CSV for inspection. Anything that passes the validation is then going to go on to eventually be written both to a CSV file for archiving purposes, and then finally also to update a Socrata dataset. So pretty cool workflow, and it's nicely annotated. And this is building permits data. Another example, this one is actually reading out of in this case a CSV file. It would work similarly for an Excel file. This is an interesting use case because it's basically taking, so this source CSV file here is actually sort of in report style format. So it has sort of these, empty columns to like divide things, and it basically is formatted such that it's more human readable. But this transformation is all about making that, extracting it out of that report format and turning it into a format that's more favorable for publishing to, in machine readable form to Socrata. So it's also doing some configuration of the address for geocoding, such as trimming out some zip codes, and then also handling some null values in various ways, and of course, and then some date formatting and writing to Socrata. All right, so we've talked a lot about the use cases. I just want to sort of highlight and summarize a few of the others, more in the context of what I've seen most commonly from existing Socrata customers that are already using FME. So they're using it oftentimes to read out of these types of systems, databases like SQL Server, Microsoft Access, Oracle, Excel CSV files, geospatial systems, especially Esri, also geospatial files, shapefiles, CAD, and of course lots more formats. Merging data from multiple sources, we've already seen lots of examples of that. Reprojection, that's a huge pain point that FME solves really nicely. It doesn't matter what projection your data is in, FME can get it into the right projection for Socrata. Renaming, concatenating, adding attributes, it's common. Reformatting data, restructuring it, for example, date formatting.
So Adrian, while we're talking about capabilities, and Craig and Laura Laura should feel comfortable chiming in on some too. There's a couple questions in regards to that. So one question was, are there any plans for a Socrata reader to read data from Socrata? And I believe the answer is yes on that, but I'd let Lauren and Craig comment officially on that.
Do you know, Laura?
Yeah, I think there is.
There is. Both of us are blank faces because we don't know. Right now, it's a big code freeze because of this release coming out in January. So, sales team and the support team's not allowed to even look at developers at this point.
In the meantime,
but yes, the answer to the question is yes. But when and where, I'm assuming that's going to be in. If it doesn't make it in the next release, it would be probably in one of the service packs or builds after that.
I think that sounds right.
In the meantime, too, you don't actually need a special reader to read from Socrata.
Correct.
So, like, there would be some benefits we could get from that, but if you just want to read a Socrata dataset, you can actually use the CSV export URL and put that into a normal FME CSV reader and get a lot of the same functionality. So you don't have to have a special reader for that. You can just use normal CSV. And then the second question, which I'm pretty sure the answer is yes for FME Cloud, but can we pull a CSV file from an email inbox? We have a cloud-hosted solution that can deliver daily exports of data. I think I know which one that is, but it can only be delivered by email. Can FME regularly check an email account and download an available CSV and process? Pretty sure you can do that with FME Cloud because I've experimented with that some. Can you do that with FME Desktop as well?
No, yeah, it would be strictly an FME server or FME Cloud solution, but it's definitely possible. Yeah.
Okay, those are the two outstanding questions we had about those. Cool. In general,
Yes.
I've found that most stuff that I wanted to try and do with FME, there were existing readers or tools out there to do, or it was pretty easy to figure out how to do it. So it's a very capable product.
Yeah, and going back to the ask about reading from an existing Socrata data set, yeah, that actually, like there is plans for an official reader, as Craig was mentioning, but also within this this connector templates that I'm going to get into, there's actually a template workflow that shows what Chris was describing, pulling the data from a Socrata data set, reading it into FME, manipulating it, and then you can publish it out again to another Socrata dataset or somewhere else. So there's actually a template that's documented for how to set that up, as well as an example workflow. So that's a good segue to connector templates. Yeah, at Socrata, what we're doing with these connector templates is we're attempting to make ETL more of a plug-and-play thing. So if you have data in a particular data system, maybe it's ArcGIS, maybe you have Open 311 data, shape files, data in existing Socrata dataset. If you want to do ETL on that data, extract it, transform it, and publish it to Socrata, we are going to offer these connector templates, which are FME workflow templates that you can download and follow a few simple instructions to basically configure it for your particular system. Maybe you enter your authentication credentials, and then it basically shows how to move the data out of that, and so you can basically just get it working really quickly without having to get really deep and learn all the things on your own. It's just kind of providing these example templates you can use. And we're putting all of these on GitHub. These will be released. These are released in the next, I think by tomorrow we'll have these up, and we'll be able to give you guys a link where you can check these out. And over time we'll be adding new connector templates, and we're putting it all on GitHub. And part of the reason we're doing that is to encourage the community to contribute their own. If you are having trouble with one, you can submit an issue. Yeah, we basically want to sort of create a little ecosystem of these connector templates to enable customers to share their knowledge and do ETL with less effort. So the initial release, we'll be showing how to get data out of a ArcGIS server. We'll have a connector template for that. Getting data from a shapefile, Open 311, and also existing Socrata data sets. There might be, yeah. So, and over time, we're going to be adding more to this list. So now I want to take a little time to kind of compare a side-by-side comparison of using FME to do ETL versus scripting ETL, which is kind of a more traditional approach to ETL. I see a lot of people scripting processes to read data, transform it, and publish it. Of course, Socrata offers SDKs and an API to do this, but I just kind of want to show sometimes what kind of advantages FME can have over that approach. So here's some real code that is actually Java code that was written to extract data from tow report data, transform it. Really, that's just manipulating the date such that it doesn't have milliseconds, removing some columns, and then publishing the results to Socrata. So that's this other file here. So this is the code there. Especially if you're not a Java developer, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. It's difficult to understand what's going on. If you wanted to get this running on your own system, it would probably be challenging, and there really isn't a whole lot of documentation. So just notice that. And now let's compare that to an equivalent FME workflow that could be used to extract this data and produce the exact same result. So what's first off that you'll notice is it makes a lot of sense just looking at it right away. You can annotate it. So to someone who's looking at this, anybody can look at this and make a lot more sense out of this than the previous code that I showed. And basically, here what you're doing is just using an Oracle database reader, date formatter, and finally publishing the results to Socrata and exclude a few columns. So it really is as simple as that. So that's kind of highlighting the differences there. And just to reiterate, so what I see as some really interesting advantages of taking an FME approach to ETL rather than scripting it is, FME enables visualizing the ETL, so it makes it easier to understand even by non-technical folks, which I think can be really important. Oftentimes less prone to errors. The code is a little bit more fickle. It's more difficult to find small bugs, whereas FME, you're really just taking these kind of building blocks that you can trust will work as you expect and put them together. Finally, ETLs, again, it makes all these things make these ETL processes more reusable. So you can share a workflow in FME, and someone else using FME can take that and understand what's going on quickly, repurpose it for their particular situation in a very visual way. And so this can enable, better internal sharing of ETL processes internal to your organization, and then also externally in this FME template context. If you've done something that you want to share, you think it might be useful to others, you can make it available publicly as an FME template so that others can download it and repurpose it for their own needs. And another good thing is, it's not specific. When you're scripting ETL, you're going to use one of all the many languages out there, so that kind of makes it hard to share these things. It's not all on a common platform.
Adrian, it's Craig here. So thanks for that. That's a great visual on that slide. I love it. One thing on FME versus coding is just the maintenance. If you have a complex, you showed a fairly simple workspace, but if you have a complex workspace, often requirements change or people leave. So if you have someone that codes something and then they leave, then the next guy's got to come in or next girl and got to try to figure out that person's code. With FME, it's much easier. The other advantage with FME is that we support, and this is all we do, right? So this is where we live and breathe, and we support so many third-party applications. Their versions are changing, they're getting updates, and that's what we take care of. So if you have, a workspace that's reading from a certain database or file structure, and that format changes or that database changes, then very quickly we will support that, and then you won't have to go through and try to figure that out on the coding side as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. That's a great addition to what I was saying.
So actually, I think this is a good time to introduce what I think will be our last question, or our close to last question. What are the key feature differences between the FME desktop, server, and cloud products, and what use cases are they probably best for Socrata customers?
Okay, so desktop is the where you start with FME. That's where you actually create all of the workspaces that you've seen that Laura showed and Adrian. Server is really the scalable enterprise platform. So if you're looking for automation, that's where server comes into play. If you're looking at notifications, or even just exposing those workspaces to people who don't necessarily want to have FME, they just want to be able to run those workspaces, then that's where FME server comes into play. FME Cloud is FME server. It's just hosted by us in the cloud, and it's pay per use. Whereas traditional FME server is you purchase a license and then you install it either on your own premise or in your own cloud environment or virtual environment. Whereas the FME Cloud is we host that for you. We take care of all the maintenance and everything, and then you just use it and pay per use. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a little bit to that. As far as like the Socrata customer use cases, basically you're always going to need FME Desktop to actually author, or in most cases you're going to need that to actually author the workflow itself. You know, create that configure that ETL, make sure it works kind of on your own side, and then once it works, you want to schedule it. You might use a tool like FME Server. That's a good tool, especially in cases where if you want to kind of centralize ETL for your organization, stand up an instance of FME Server. You can have multiple users publishing workflows to that server, where then you can have this web interface, you know, browser-based interface to actually go ahead and schedule the workflows and kind of manage them. You can set up monitoring. So it's really useful if you really want to centralize the ETL, because
right.
A lot of our customers have large, diverse organizations, and you know, each department might have their own sort of ETL processes or ETL server, but FME Server can be really useful to kind of centralize all that and not have to sort of reinvent the wheel around things like monitoring.
Right. And I should point out that with desktop, you can batch a workspace with desktop and use your own scheduling tool. And so quite often our users are using desktop. They're running those workspaces on desktop. But you're right, Adrian. It's when you're sort of taking it to next level is where people will take a look at server.
Yeah, exactly. And then as far as the cloud, the one thing I do want to mention about cloud, the only case for cloud, you know, cloud is essentially just hosting FME Server for you, so you don't need to stand up your own server to run FME Server. However, that cloud is in the cloud, so that means if you have firewalls and such, that might present difficulty for having those servers read data from behind the firewall.
Right.
If it's on the cloud. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Okay, guys, one last question that I think is a good one. Would FME be able to cycle through files in a folder if I'm looking at those as the source? I think what they have is a directory full of CSV users and like that, and they want to use those to update data sets on Socrata.
Yeah, I think you could definitely do that. Craig, do you want to field that? I think I have an approach I could suggest, but
I'm going to let Laura. She's jumping at the bit here.
Yeah, so with any reader that's reading from any kind of file-based format, you can actually just point it directly right at a directory and just tell it to read every file with the extension .csv at the end, for example, and it'll pull it all in for you. So you can just do that. It's just a setting on the reader itself, so it's pretty easy to set up.
Awesome. And would that work if those data files had different destinations as well?
Yeah, so you can use the filtering capabilities inside FME. So you can filter, you know, all the files that start with A should go in this output, and all the files that start with B go this way. So it's just a matter of configuring your workspace to filter out and push those into the right directions. Great,
thank you. And I don't think I've seen any new questions come in, so I think the last question is actually for the attendees. Is that, would you like to receive a demonstration of how FME Socrata can be used at your organization? So we're going to set up some demos with interested customers. If you're interested in that, click yes in the poll, and we'll make sure we contact you. And with that, do you guys have any closing notes you want to talk about before we say goodbye?
No, just again, thanks for all the attendees for taking time out of their busy schedules. And once again, thanks, guys, at Socrata. It's always a pleasure, and we'll be talking with you guys shortly.
Great.
Thanks a lot, everybody. I just wanted to add, yeah, this last slide, we'll send these out to the attendees, but this will get some links where you can since if you're a Socrata customer, you can actually get a free 30-day trial of FME Desktop. So the link for that is here. and also some resources to learn FME, and then the support resources on both the safe support side, or you can also reach out to Socrata support, support at socrata.com, and yeah, we're looking forward to working with you. And thanks a lot, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laura and Craig and Adrian and Bryant for setting this all up. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.